Hello, Planeswalkers.
I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you're listening to the newest episode of the Commander at Arms podcast. This week on the podcast, we are talking about Wish effects and as well as Wish adjacent effects and their functionality or lack thereof in Commander. But before we do any of that, we're going to go to our upkeep trigger here, Paul, just like we do every single week. And we're going to thank all of our patrons. We love you for your support, and you help us keep the lights on here in the studios, as well as pumping out weeks and weeks of content. And that help and support definitely helps us push into more content that we wish to do in the future. If you want to help the show grow and support us directly, you can do that at patreon.com/commanderatarms. Now, Paul, with all that out of the way, do you have any mail day or interesting finds that you've found over the week?
Nothing for me this week, but I know you, James, were talking before we started here about some things you got in.
I definitely did. I got a showcase sketch foil variant, whatever you want to call it, foil Harmonic Prodigy, because we had a new member in our Discord channel ask us for our gear aid lists, which I already had mine done up, and Paul, you put yours together really quickly. And we noticed there were some similarities, but they also suggested some cards to us to put in. And I went, Harmonic Prodigy doubles the triggers of, what was it, Shamans and Wizards? I always thought Garrett was a Druid, and so did you. So I was like, that doesn't work. And I went, oh, here's a Shaman. You get 2 Rhinos tapped and attacking. I was like, yeah, I have to pick up this card. And for some reason, the sketch foil version was cheaper than the regular foil version. Don't ask me why, but I love the sketch foil variants.
I don't think Harmonic Prodigy comes in sketch foil, because that was a Modern Horizons 2 card.
Modern Horizons 2 had the sketch art.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of the handbook art for the Dungeons and Dragons cards.
That's definitely
I always conflate the two.
Well, I was like, yeah, it's sketch variants or whatever, and I just got called that it's anything that's different to the Magic card is just called a showcase. But then you're trying to differentiate between, you know, the very first showcases we got with Throne of Eldraine moving into Ikoria. We got the comic book art style as well as the variant kaiju cards, I guess you would call them, right? That's what they were when they were the Godzilla versions.
Sure.
That's what we're going to call them here. But there's so many different variants and everything. And that is a different topic for a whole different day. But anyway, I got that. I also got Wolvar of Icewind Dale from the Vondris, that's how you pronounce it, right? Yeah. Precon, which is really cool because he also doubles the attacking triggers of creatures, which again, Geared is an attack trigger. So you would get another Rhino. And then after that, it was the Moonblessed Cleric in foil as well. That thing was like 35 cents, and it's fantastic, and I love that card. And it's a human. If anyone needs to know, it is a human cleric.
Speaking of deck text, since we just talked about Geared, I did record, and James edited and uploaded a deck tech about Trelasara Moondancer, which I affectionately call Dancing in the Moonlight, because it's a great song. If you haven't seen that video already, please go check it out on YouTube, leave a comment, give a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I worked pretty hard on that deck. I want to say I spent about a few hours just, thinking of cards to put in, and then another like hour or so actually cutting cards to make it down to the 99. So please give that video some love if you can. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, I love that deck. I watched that deck tech through about 3 times when I was editing it to make sure everything was like good and cohesive. And man, you did a fantastic job talking about the cards and kind of just churning through it as quickly as possible as well. I was really, really impressed. And the intro, I love that intro. I watched it like 4 times. I showed Michaela. She loved it. I was like, that is the god of intros for me, because it's such a good parody of our podcast intro that, I mean, it was great. It was so good, man. Like, I thought about doing something similar to about like when I was doing the videos, but I'm like, nah, that's too cheesy. But you pulled it off with pure subtle perfection is what I'm going to call it. All right. So we only have one last thing here to do in the upkeep before we get to draw a card and move into our main phase 1 and start playing spells. And that's our play of the week. Now, it's funny we're talking about Gear Ed, Paul, because my play of the week is I got to play Commander with the Commander crew guys, with Corey, Chris, and Eddie on their stream on Sundays, like we usually do. If they need a fourth, they just hit me up, because by this time I'm not a guest on that stream anymore. I'm just furniture, and I keep saying that because all their viewers are like, "Hey, we know this guy. He's been on here 4 to 5 to 6 to 8 to 10 times." And I keep saying, Corey, man, if you ever need a fourth or stuck for someone to play a game, I'm always available to play Magic, because that's what I love doing. And it got to the point where I was getting just hammered on this whole game. I think I got Geared out once, then Geared got removed, and then Culling Ritual went off and destroyed all of our mana rocks and all of our, 2 CMC less, or 2 mana value and less, sorry, which was my Rhinos. I was like, damn it, I don't have a board anymore. I resolved the Mirari's Wake. Table went around again. I was getting punched a little bit, and then the Guillaume player, which was Chris, decided to cast Last Laugh, and that is whenever a permanent goes to the goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, each creature and each player takes 1 damage. And then if there are no creatures on board, you sacrifice Last Wish. Sorry, Last Laugh, not Last Wish. We're going to talk about wishes in a second. You sacrifice Last Laugh. And with that, it was just like a total board wipe. I think I went down to 6. Chris went to 13. Corey was on 16. And Eddie was on 15. I had Mirari's Wake on the field, and I also had Fires of Yavimaya, which is gives everything haste, and you can sack it to do a +2/+2 to target creature. So on my next turn with all my double mana, I tapped some of it, I cast Geared, I swung at Chris, because he only had 1 creature. I also had Iroas, God of Victory. That's very important, because it gives my creatures menace. Swung at him with Geared, 2 Rhinos, dealt 13 damage, because Mirari's Wake gives everything a +1/+1. So 2 Rhinos being 10 power, and then Geared being a 3/6. And then I was like, all right, cool. Went around the table again, and I was tapped out, so I got to keep that. And I was like, all right, cool. I had Godsire in hand, and I was thinking how I could do this. How could I possibly deal enough damage to do something? I was like, I'm just going to get hit in the crackback. And everyone's like, we're not playing, colors that have haste, even though there are haste enables in all colors now. And they're like, all right, cool, whatever. Yep, cool. I got back to my turn. I was like, Mirari's Wake was destroyed. He was going to hit the fires, and I'm glad he didn't. So the Mirari's Wake went away, and I was like, oh, damn, I can't cast the Godsire anymore and win with Paul's favorite card and be like, haha, Paul, look what I did. Not only did I cast Godsire, but I won a game with Godsire. I drew into a overwhelming Stampede, and the meme of the lady with the math over her face went over my face for a second, and I was like, how can I do this? And I was like, you know what? If I lose, I lose, but I'm doing this. I took about 2 to 3 minutes to figure the math out, because I'm not a math whiz like Paul is. Sacked the Yavimaya, targeted one of my Rhinos, gave it a +2/+2, so it was a 6/6, cast Overwhelming Stampede, gave everything +6/+6, menace, pseudo indestructible, and swung, populated the 12/12, and they were like, oh, but it doesn't get the counters because, you don't populate counters. I was like, they're not counters, brother. That's base. So I made a 12/12, swung a 12/12 and Geared at Corey, and then swung a 12/12 and a 10/10 at Eddie. And I think after blocks, it was I think it was 1 over for Corey, and then it was Xaxes on Eddie. And I was so happy that I spent the whole game, getting dunked on, and then came out with the victory with Rhinos. I love this deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a better show than my Geared deck put on last time I played it. Man, I'm just so disappointed. I played with Corey and a couple of the Commander Crew guys, I think the Friday prior, and I played Veyron, then I played Geared, and both times, I just got mana flooded out the wazoo. It was really bad. I've never been flooded like that before.
Yeah, I hate getting flooded. All right, so we're going to move into our main phase 1 here, Paul. If you had nothing else to say in our upkeep, can we finally draw our first card for the turn?
I'll allow it.
Cool. Let's draw a card, play a land, and a spell. And that spell is always having a turn 1 play. Also, I've noticed that whenever I play on streams with the Commander Crew guys, I always have a turn 1 play. And the one time I didn't, I won the game. So what does that say to you guys playing your turn 1 Sol Rings and turn 1 Birds? Don't do it, it's bad. Anyway, enough chitter chatter about that stuff. We're going to talk about wishes, Paul. We have the slight little definition of what a wish is. So if no one's really familiar with what a wish card is, it was a cycle of cards that started in Judgment way back in the day. I'm not even going to try and pretend that I know what year Judgment came out off the top of my head, unless you can, Paul.
No idea.
Cool.
I'm pretty sure it was in the 90s. I want to say it was like 98, 99, somewhere around there. 2002. I was completely wrong.
Yeah, I was just trying to find it on the on the wiki page here real quick. All right, cool. So it was a cycle in Judgment. There were one colored each, so there was 5 of them. There was Golden Wish for white, Cunning Wish for blue, Death Wish for black, Burning Wish for red, and Living Wish for green. So, Paul, do you just want to break down what a wish card is for everybody who's not quite familiar with what a wish card is?
Yeah, a wish and wish adjacent effects are basically any ability that says that you can bring one or more cards in some cases you own from outside the game, that's the actual wording, and put them into your hand. So in a casual game, you can a card from outside the game could be like, oh, you open your trade binder and there's 6 Kozileks or whatever. That's outside the game. In a tournament like a competitive REL setting, a card you choose from outside the game must be from your sideboard. No exceptions. Your 15-card sideboard.
Which in some cases is pretty damn good because you normally have to wait until that match is over before you can sideboard in something against that player. I'm not too good with like best out of 3 one-on-one competitive Magic play because come on, we play Commander, Paul. We want that 100-card singleton.
I have some familiarity with 60-card formats, and wishes are generally played in like storm decks, so that instead of using spots in your deck for win cons, you can actually just like use a wish to get the win con to build your storm count like 1 or 2 steps further. It also lets you, in some cases, like James said, if you really need it, you can like use a wish to get the blood moon that's in your sideboard or something. Just to give yourself a little more versatility in the initial matchup as opposed to waiting until post game to sideboard.
Yeah, and the main reason why they don't work in Commander is because we don't have a sideboard. And the rules committee, so Sheldon and the rest of the CAG decided that if you have to spend time, flicking through your binder or boxes or whatever to find the perfect card you needed at the time, then it's probably not worth it because games go on for ages as it is anyway. So I think it was more of a time grasp kind of thing so that they'd make them that they didn't work, except for one exception. There is one wish adjacent like effect that does work.
That effect is Companion. While not a wish effect in and of itself, Companion typically only works in formats where there is a sideboard because you put the Companion as part of your sideboard, and then when you start the game, you declare that card as your Companion. For some reason, this works in Commander. I don't want to pretend like I know the details of that or how or why that works. But you can have companions in Commander exactly the same way you do in 60-card formats, but without the sideboard that you would normally put them in.
I think when Companion first came out, just playing it from quote-unquote a secondary Commander zone seemed pretty powerful for some of these effects. Like, Lutri got banned before we even got to play with it and playtest it, and I totally see why. It is a spell copier from the command zone that you can cast at flash speed. I think it did a functional errata on that one to make sure that it kind of dumbed Companion down for, I guess, competitive play, and also I think it dumbed down too far for EDH because we don't really ever see people playing companions as the companion. I play Lurrus of the Dream Den in Teysa because it is a amazing 3-mana 3/2 with lifelink and lets you play things out of the graveyard, but I would never play it as a companion in that deck because I want to play more than, I believe it's you can't play anything more than 2 CMC in your deck. That restriction is nuts.
Yeah, you wouldn't even be able to play Teysa, so.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for that, like, Companion was a really cool mechanic, but I think, I don't know if it was executed exactly how they wanted it to be done originally, because it is now you pay 3 generic mana to pick up your Companion and put it into your hand, and then you pay its mana cost and put it on the board, put it on the stack. It resolves, it goes on the board. So it'd be the same as if we had, if command attacks worked like that, like instead of just, playing your commander from the command zone for its mana cost, you would pay 2 mana, put it to your hand, and then pay its mana cost and put it on the field. I think that's kind of how Companion works. And if it worked with Commander, it'd be so weird to see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's still weird to me that companions work in Commander. Like I've accepted it at this point, but it's still a weird, unnatural concept to me. I'm not sure if that's the word that I want to use, but it's the word that I'm gonna use. Like you said, a lot of them don't work, but the ones that do, like Gyruda and Karuga, I think are two of the more popular ones, which we did a deck tech about a Gyruda companion Muldrotha the Eventide deck a long time ago. That was episode 3, I think. And it's still weird to me that you can have this 101st card, and a lot of people called us not crazy, but a lot of people thought that we were being a little like over dramatic when we thought that companion was insane in Commander. And it's just weird that, like, in retrospect, yeah, maybe we were, but in theory, it is truly like something to be scared of.
Yeah, because it is we're a 100 card singleton format, and having a 101st card in Commander was just like, okay, everyone has to be running a companion because it just adds one extra layer of like depth to your deck, but also adds, that's the thing with Commander as well, and it's going to kind of leeway into a topic we're going to talk about in the second half of this episode. But it's like deck building restrictions again, because I mean, you're already restricted by what colors you're playing on your commander, but then when you add the companion, you're restricted even further about what you can play. So Commander was supposed to be this, big all-inclusive, you play any single bulk rare common card, 10-cent, 1-cent card that you want to play. Doesn't matter. You have the absolute full pool of everything that has ever been printed bar the ban list, right? And then you add companion in there, and it's like, oh, well, you want to play Lurrus in a reanimated deck because it's phenomenal in a reanimated deck, but you can't play anything over 2 CMC if you want this to be a companion. That doesn't really help you unless you were to play, a 2 CMC white and black aristocrat style card, which I can't even think of a commander that does that at 2 CMC.
There's a cleric from Oath of the Gatewatch, I think, right? That sack stuff. It's
Oh yes,
Ailey?
yeah. I know the one you're
Is it
talking about
Ailey?
now. Yeah, I was also thinking Aura, from Zendikar Rising, but I believe he is higher than 2 CMC.
Well, at any rate, we did a whole episode about companion very early on. If you want to hear more about
It was our first episode.
yeah, that was
It
our
was
first
our
episode.
it was our break. It was our our release into the world. Is how does companion work and why is it good/bad? I would say go back and listen to our first episode if you haven't listened to it. But I also think as content creators, Paul and I have definitely stepped up our game in this last year and a bit that we've been doing this show. So maybe go back and check it out, or just we can give you the TLDR in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, if you do go back, it'll be funny to see how things have changed since then, and that really wasn't that long ago. That was just a year ago, right?
Yeah, it was. But I still feel like we've come on a very big journey since then, Paul. Anyway.
But this episode is mainly about wishes and wish adjacent effects. So apparently it's been a big topic of discussion as of late, as far as we know, that wishes, well, the topic is wishes working or not working in Commander, and whether or not it's a good thing, a bad thing, if they should work, if they shouldn't work. I think James and I are on the same side on this one, but I am of the opinion that wish cards are very unique, and it's very unfortunate that they don't work in Commander. And for that reason, I feel as though they should have the text from like Karn, Great Creator. There's also another one that gets like an Eldrazi or something, Coax from the Blind Eternities. Those can get things from exile as well. And I feel like we should just quote errata, end quote, every wish card to have that text that you can get something from exile as well. Only because, and again, a lot of these wish cards are so unique and so cool, and there's not really a lot of ways to interact with things in exile. I know that is by intention, but in a singleton format with very high variance, I feel like having more of those effects especially if somebody gets really screwed with their commander, because I know with the new rulings, like Rune of the Hidden Realms is pretty annoying to deal with, and various other things, I'm sure. But I just think that opening up a little more opportunity for some cool interactions couldn't possibly be a bad thing. Also, with the learn mechanic, which is very similar to Wish, it already has a functionality built into it for Commander, which is you can discard a card to draw a card, also known as looting. No, not looting. Sorry.
It's rummaging. Yeah, rummaging. Yeah, because you have to discard first. Looting is you draw a card, then discard a card.
Yeah, you throw it away and you pick up something new.
We got there in the end, Paul.
Learn has a rummage attached to it, which already gives it functionality in Commander. But I feel like it should be able to do something with lessons, because lessons aren't really that inherently powerful. There are a couple of good ones, but for a lot of decks, they would really appreciate being able to tutor their library for a land and put it in their hand, or scry 2 and draw 1 for 3 mana, whatever the case may be.
Is there a lesson card that lets you ramp in colorless?
It's not ramp because you just put the land in your hand, but yeah, there's a lesson that's colorless. That's 2 mana. You search your library for a land, put it in your hand, and then you gain 2 life.
Man, I actually forgot about that one. Hey, I remember there was a card draw one that was kind of it was a 3 mana brainstorm, I believe.
Yeah, it was 3 mana scry 2 draw 1. It was a 3 mana preordain.
Preordain, that's it. I always get those two mixed up. That's still not terrible. I mean, people wanted white card draw, and here's a little bit of extra white card draw if you're willing to throw things away. And in certain decks, like the mono white cleric bird from Dominaria, who cares about artifacts being in your graveyard, that wouldn't be a bad thing, really. You could build a really cool it's already a really cool mono white artifact deck, but having the ability to preordain at 3 instead of 1 in colorless, and also go and get a plains out of your library and put it into your hand is also really, it's deck thinning in white. And then when you do draw, you're just drawing straight gas. I mean, we've also got things like land tax that does the same thing kind of stuff, but that's a whole different kit and caboodle. But I think some of these lesson cards would be really cool in the mono white slot, as they're they're not as powerful as their colored versions, but they still kind of help mono white a little bit, I think.
I mean, even outside of mono white, there are decks that would just, sometimes you say oh, I wish I had a land, right? And
yeah,
if these learn cards could do that for you, because a lot of these learn cards are actually not that expensive, then we might see learn pop up more often in Commander. Because as of right now, it's, I want to say, one of the mechanics I have seen the least in Commander. I haven't seen a single person play a learn card.
I haven't either.
And even though it does already have that rummage functionality built in, I really wish that the lesson part of it did work as intended.
Yeah, do you think that if wish cards were able to effectively grab us things from exile, would that make cards like Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshares worse as a removal spell? Because it would no longer remove that card from the game in its entirety anymore.
I don't think so. Because here's the thing: people aren't gonna run Bear in mind that they still have to match the type of the card that Wish is trying to get. So Living Wish gets a creature or a land. That and Death Wish would be the only things that could get your Commander at Exile, for example. I think where it becomes really interesting is there are cards that actually exile cards from your library, on purpose. Usually used with Mist Hollow Griffin combos. I can't think of the names of them off the top of my head, and I'm not going to search for it right now. But I think those cards get a lot more interesting because those are also unique effects that don't see play in Commander, because there's basically no point unless you're playing, like I said, a Mist Hollow Griffin combo or an Eldrazi, whatever that thing's name is. James knows. He always tells me what it is. I always forget it.
Sorry, which Eldrazi?
The one that you can play from Exile.
Eternal Scourge.
There you go. Eternal Scourge.
Got there in the end, mate.
Cards like that are where you see those exile cards from your library cards get played. But if these wishes actually did what they said on the card, except, instead of just outside the game, it counts exile as well, then we might see some cool, interactions with those cards. We might see more play in Commander. And I think it actually ultimately will lead to greater versatility in decks, not only in casual commander, but I think also CDH, like Storm decks might start playing cards like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at some of the the original wish cards from the Judgment cycle, and it's interesting to see that, like, I think out of the 5, there's one instant speed, which is Cunning Wish, and it is 3 mana. So it is 3 mana value. It's 2 and a blue to go and instantly go and it's an instant speed spell to go and get an instant card from outside of the game. And then Death Wish is like go and get a just it says choose a card from outside of the game, but you lose half of your life rounded up, and then you exile Death Wish. So I was like, oh, is there a little interaction if these things were legal? Could you just like loop your wish cards in and out of exile into your hand? But I don't think you could, or if you could, it wouldn't be with the original Judgment cycle.
I'm not seeing a way to do that. The closest you could possibly come is like Death Wish can get Cunning Wish, but Cunning Wish can't get Death Wish because it's a sorcery.
Yeah, no, that was just a weird little rabbit hole that I went down as you were talking about, like playing things from exile, which Eternal Scourge, Squee, and Immortal, I mean, they can both be played from exile, which is really cool. And I mean, they're also like pivotal parts of food chain combos as well.
I mean, there's also been wish cards printed like even as recently as, well, I mean, one just got printed in Adventures in the Forgotten Realm, but even like Fae of Wishes from Eldraine was a wish for 4 mana. And that card doesn't see play because that side of it has no functionality in Commander. And if it did, it would be like actually a really good card because it's a repeatable wish. It doesn't get creatures; it gets non-creatures, so you can't like continuously dodge commander attacks with it. But I don't know. I think that it would be okay to at least test out that adding the exile effect onto these wishes. Whether or not it's like actually good, I'm pretty sure you need to try it in order to know that for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at now. Is I think we just need some play testing and stuff. Like there's a card from I think this is Rivals of Ixalan that I didn't even see have a wish effect on it. And that's Mastermind's Acquisition. It's 2 and 2 black for a sorcery that says choose one, search library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So I mean, it's a demonic tutor for 4 mana at sorcery speed, or there is already a 4 mana sorcery speed tutor in black, but I can't remember its name, but I can see the artwork in my head.
Diabolic Tutor.
That's the one. See, it goes both way, Pauls. Sometimes I kind of remember the cards and you can, and yeah, it's great. I love the ebb and flow. Anyway, it says choose one, basically, demonic tutor, or you can go and choose a card from your own outside of the game and put it into your hand. I had that in a deck. I had that in my Tergrid deck, and I just didn't even see it as a wish card. Honestly, I saw it as a tutor card, and I think it's cards like that have the modal that if that said, you can either go and get a card that you own in exile or a card you got in your library and put it into your hand. That card would see a lot more play because the fact that it is modal, and I mean, everyone who's a fan of the show or has listened to the show for a while knows how much Paul loves modal spells.
I do love modal spells, and fun fact about this one in particular, I played a game one time with somebody who I never played with again. And I've actually talked about this experience on the show before, not this part of it perhaps, but he won the game because he didn't tell anybody that he had a sideboard, and he masterminds Acquisition for a Torment of Hailfire. He got it from his, quote, sideboard, end quote, but told nobody before the game that he had a sideboard. He just pulled it out of his deck box.
In Commander?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Obviously didn't go to the Commander website, which I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Go to the website and check out I think it's 11 rules that you needed to kind of abide by to play Commander, and that's that comes down to Rule Zero talks that we've already talked about on the show and everything. But that is
major breach.
Yeah, that is a super breach in like the social contract we have in Commander. But at any rate, Paul, do you have anything else you wanted to say about wishes before we move into our combat phase here?
No, sir.
Excellent. Let's move on to our combat phase. I'm going to swing up with some rhinos. How do you declare to block, Paul?
I'll take it all.
Cool. So you're going to lose the game.
That's fine.
All right, cool. Just
I'm going to get some chips and dip.
sick. Can you also get me some chips and dip also? Anyway,
no, you killed me.
that's totally fair. I got 2 other players to deal with. All right, cool. Let's go to our combat phase here, and we're going to hear a message from our sponsors right now. Welcome back from that ad break. Paul, how are them chips and dip?
Man. My boy hooked me up with the spinach and artichoke. I'm cleaning out that tub tonight.
I wish we were a food podcast, but we're not. We're a magic podcast. So let's get back into our main phase 2 here. As I just killed you with combat damage, I'm going to try and cast some more things. Maybe, hopefully, win this game that we're theoretically playing. Meta knowledge, we're not actually playing. Anyway, main phase 2, we're going to get into something. We're going to talk about another sort of kind of card that we saw an errata happen. So we just talked about cards that functionally do not work in Commander. But what about a card that got errated and reprinted, I want to say recently, but now works a lot worse in Commander than what it ever did before? And that's Ubeliet. Paul, do you want to explain to our viewers what Ubeliet is?
Absolutely. Ubeliet is an enchantment. It is 1 black. When it enters, it's basically a black Oblivion ring, kind of. When it enters the battlefield, it phases out target creature as long as Ubeliet is on the battlefield. And now the difference between that and exiling is that phasing a creature or phasing a permanent in general means it does not actually change zones. So if you Ubeliet someone's commander, they cannot choose to put it back in the command zone as a replacement effect. I've talked about this interaction before, but if you were to have an Opalescence out, which turns each enchantment into a creature with power and toughness equal to its mana cost, and you had a Panharmonicon, you could, if you wanted to be an absolute meanie, cast an Ubeliet. Its ETB will trigger twice because of Panharmonicon and the fact that it's a creature. And you could phase somebody's commander and then phase Ubeliet itself, and those permanents will be completely uninteractable forever. That person will never have their commander back. There's no way to do so. And even though that's a real niche scenario, the fact that it's possible seems like that just shouldn't be a thing. The way Ubeliet was previously worded, I believe it exiled. And then that permanent would just come back with everything that it had, all the counters it had, which is essentially what phasing is. But the way it was worded before, it was still an exile effect. And since it was reprinted, they had to update the wording so that it would fit in the text box, which means that they changed that to phasing. And with phasing, even if you just have Ubeliet out, enchantments are actually surprisingly difficult to interact with. And if that opponent doesn't have any way to interact with it at that time, they're going to be losing their commander for quite a while. And for that reason, Ubeliet works worse now than it did prior to its errata.
Reading the original Arabian Nights version of Ubeliet, yeah, it was an exile effect because it said that creature is considered out of play as long as Ubeliet is in play.
And I believe it actually says on the Arabian Nights version, when it leaves the battlefield, return that creature to play. I believe it actually uses that wording.
If Ubeliet is removed, creature returns to play tapped.
Yeah. So that wording alone implies that it was an exile effect. I can't exactly remember from before the errata, but I'm pretty sure it was an exile effect.
And then if their commander gets exiled, what seemingly be forever, then what are we really playing here? What does that set a precedence for in the new state of what commander could be? If this interaction was more widespreadly known that every black deck was running this kind of interaction, would that just make commander a whole different format to what it is now? Or would they have to ban something? Or do you reckon we'd ever seen Ubeliet ban if people were going to abuse this interaction in, I believe, all Zov colors?
I think it's a little too niche. I think that would probably fall under the Rule 0 argument, hey, could you not Ubeliet my commander forever? That'd be great, thanks.
Yeah, as a commander player who literally builds his deck around his commander, which is what I feel like you should do, it kind of feels really, it's a feels bad moment when they go, well, see you later. Your commander is no longer a thing. You'll never get it back. I would probably just end up saying, all right, cool, I'm out of the game because I literally can't do anything. I'm just going to go find another pod to play in.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. And like I said, even with Ubeliet just being an enchantment without that, cheesy little interaction I mentioned, it's still quite a hassle to deal with because you are playing Sans Commander for however long your deck decides that you are, basically. Like, if you only run 6 to 7 pieces of interaction for enchantments and artifacts, sorry, but you're probably you're probably playing a commanderless deck for the rest of the game.
So having a way to kind of interact with the exile zone now would be, I think, a really cool design space that they could push into, because of all the reasons we said in main phase 1. But with Ubeliet aside, we have one last little talking point here that we wanted to pretty much get off our chests and kind of maybe help newer players kind of understand how it works. And it's something that I guess, like us as seasoned players, just kind of not really took for granted, but kind of just understood how it worked. And that was hybrid mana symbols. We've talked about it before on the show when we talk about cards. We say, it's hybrid Orzhov, or it's hybrid Selesnya, or it's hybrid Simic. But what does that actually mean? And what's the easiest way to explain it to a new player?
The way that I usually explain it is, and we have the like semi-official wording here, is that each hybrid mana symbol represents a cost that can be paid with one of two colors. And usually what I'll tell anybody who asks about that, which I haven't actually heard this question in a while, so I'm glad we're talking about it now, is you can pay that cost with, like, if they're looking at a white-black pip, I'll say, like, oh, you can pay that cost with either a white or a black, but you do not need to pay both. It gets a little trickier when people ask about, like, oh, how does it work with devotion? Spoiler, it only counts as one or the other. You don't count it as two towards devotion. But the main thing that comes up with hybrid mana is identity. And it's been a consistent debate in the Magic community. I see this at least once a week, if not more often than that. Hybrid mana cards should count as one or the other color because you can pay one or the other color of mana for that card. And again, I've seen this time and time and time again. I am of the opinion that hybrid mana cards are where they should be. Their identity is, both the colors that they are, because, for example, like Kitchen Finks is a green and white card. It's not a green or a white card. It is both green and white. It is targeted by things that target green and white creatures. So, for me at least, the identity is exactly where it should be. I don't think it would be very intuitive. I think it would be very weird, for example, if I could play Kitchen Finks in my mono-white Elish Norn deck. That would look very strange, not just to me, but probably to a lot of the people that I'm playing with. I understand the argument for it. I just don't particularly think that it is correct.
Yeah, I think the main argument for hybrid mana being one or the other is to kind of open up the card pool a little bit. And like you said, have Kitchen Finks available in a mono white deck. But I mean, that would really just see it be a combo piece in mono white with Anafenza, Tree Spirit, Kin Tree Spirit, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
It's not bad because it gives mono white a little bit of a leg up, but then you're kind of opening up the floodgates to every other color getting possibly more broken versions of cards that we have already. But because they're tied to, two colors, sometimes three colors, it's a little harder to kind of get those into certain decks, which I think, I'm of the opinion as well that hybrid mana should stay the way that it is. And I'm very glad that it doesn't work the way that Mark Rosewater said it did, or tried to get it originally to work, and that's that the card has no color identity in your hand, and then it gains the color identity when you cast the spell, depending on which mana you used to cast it.
It also gets a little non-intuitive with, there are some like older cards from like Shards of Alara that have like a solid mana symbol and then a hybrid mana symbol. And I think in those cases, like Slave of Bolas is an example of this. It's 3 hybrid red-blue and then solid black, 5 mana. And I think in that case, it might get a little confusing like what decks you can play that in, what decks you can't play that in. Obviously, some of us will know, being seasoned players, we can understand that. Oh, you can play it in your Dimir deck, you can play it in your Rakdos deck, or you can play it in your Grixis deck. But to a newer player, it might not be immediately evident.
It's similar to Beseech the Queen. It is two or a black, and it's three of those. So it can either be paid with 6 generic mana or 3 black mana, or any variation thereof. To me, that should be a black only card. It shouldn't be allowed to be played in a colorless deck like an Eldrazi deck. If you were to be playing Kozilek the Great Distortion, or any of the other Eldrazi Titans as your commander, you shouldn't be able to run what seemingly is a colorless card, but it realistically is a black card, because then if we open that gate as well, the Beseech the Queen could be then played in every single deck, because it would be a colorless card and not, or it'd be a colorless card and a black card.
I'm not sure if I don't know. That's a tricky one, but I mean that's just even more reason why we should just treat hybrid cards as both or all three of the colors, whatever the case may be that they are.
Yeah, see, I was trying to make it hard to explain why you would want that, and because you weren't able to, I think is a good reason why we should keep them the way they are, because of that fact that maybe like it's even a little hard for us between two, very well off seasoned players to kind of make it easy to understand people who probably wouldn't have that understanding to begin with. And yeah, I think, like I said, just leave it as it is. Don't touch it. Everything is working fine and as intended. So I wouldn't go messing around with anything else. All right, Paul, did you have any final thoughts on hybrid mana symbols for anybody?
Only that I know what we're saying is quite a point of contention. So obviously there's going to be dissenting opinions out there, which is perfectly okay. We always enjoy a healthy discussion. If you have thoughts either to the contrary or similar to me and James, feel free to let us know. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If you're on Twitter, just go ahead and let us know there how angry you are at us for dismantling your dreams. We'd love to hear it. And just please, whenever you can, just reach out to us.
Definitely. And with that, we're going to bring this episode to a close and move to our end step now and pass it over to the next player at the table. So we're going to start our end step here with our Discord server. So you can find our server on Discord, which is Commander at Arms. We'll also have the link in the show notes below. If you want to get at us on Twitter or Instagram, you can do that at CMDR at Arms. And like Paul said, you can at us, tweet at us questions. We will answer them. And if you have a good enough question or something we see is relevant or interesting, we'll even put it in one of our episodes coming up, where we continue to do these kind of what are questions that we get from the community. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification button as well, and leave a comment. If you're not on the YouTube, go check that one out. It is Commander at Arms on YouTube. We do deck techs, unboxings, and the podcast also goes on there as well. If you want to support your local game stores and buy online and have your cards shipped to you and kind of help us as well, you can do that through our TCG affiliate link at tcgplayer.com/commander-at-arms. If you want to rep a Commander-at-Arms logo across your chest while you're playing at your LGS or even just online, I wear mine every time I record a deck tech, and I hope Paul does the same too. They are super soft Bella Canvas t-shirts. I love mine, and the link for those will be in the show notes below. Again, I want to thank all of our patrons for allowing us to do this content and open up and just do more content, more video content, and more podcast content, and as well as hosting more events on our Discord server. If you want to become a patron and help us support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/commander-at-arms. And now, Paul, do you have any final thank yous for our listeners?
Thank you to everybody who is listening, and thank you to everybody on YouTube who has been watching the deck techs. Even if this is the first and last episode you ever have or ever will listen to, it means a lot to me and James that you took the time to do so. If you did happen to enjoy what you just listened to, please feel free to share our name around. Tell your friends, tell your play group. Let them know, hey, we just listened to these cool guys, Commander at Arms. They got a lot of like hot takes and cool opinions that you may want to hear. And now more than ever, we really want to encourage some interaction from our audience. So please, if you have anything you want to say, even if it's just a hey, howdy, how you going? Please shout out to us on YouTube or Twitter or even Instagram. We have any way that you can communicate with us. Please feel free to take advantage of that.
If you want to even jump in the Discord channel, and I'm usually in there daily. And with all that, I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you've been listening to the newest episode of the Commander at Arms podcast. Peace.
See ya.